Welcome everybody. Our first People Assembly organized by the Citizen Spring Collective. There's a couple of people from the Citizen Spring Collective in this call. It's the first one in English on the 5G topic. The goal of this People Assembly is to create a space where participants can actually learn from each other and learn from some experts in the 5G debate. It is very symptomatic, the 5G debate, for the society we live in. It's quite complex, the topic, and there's a lot of misinformation that has been shared. There are many different aspects in the topic that need to be taken into account. There's the social and the economic impact. There's the impact on the health, maybe, the ecological impact, and it's of course also an ethical and a philosophical debate. So that's why we picked this topic to be the first one of a whole series of people assemblies. That's what we dream of, in order to bring the government closer to the people, in order to bring companies closer to the people, and to all get out of our social media bubbles and get information from real people. Because there's always a human behind the perspective and a point of view, and we sometimes forget that when we are behind our screens. So that's why we are here. This is very much an experiment, so we are very happy to have you all here. We invited two experts to this meeting. We have David Bol and Dani Goderis. So I will go through the agenda with you for a bit. So after my welcome words, they will take over and they will give for 10 minutes a short presentation on their expertise and on their perspective on the topic 5G. After that, we will put you into breakout groups for about 20 minutes. Then we come back in the plenary. Again, we go into breakout groups and again a plenary, and then we have been working for 2 hours and we can end this meeting with a checkout. We're gonna get you active immediately and we're gonna start with a small poll. Xavier, up to you. There is a poll and you will be able to give your opinion on your current view on deploying 5G in our society. The poll is anonymous, so nobody can actually see what you vote for, right? Okay, thank you very much. So first, before we roll into the experts and the presentations, I would like to make some agreements to optimize the space that we have here. One of them is that we're going to record this video, this people assembly. If you do not like to be recorded, or if you want to, if you don't want people to see your face, you're very welcome to just switch off your video, yeah, and then we can just hear you. The breakout groups, the breakout groups are not recorded. So please, like if you're working in a small group, it would be very nice if you would just keep your video on to make a connection to the tiny group you're working in at that very moment. Okay. We also use hand signals in Zoom calls because they're just quite useful. If you hear something that you like, if somebody is making a point and you agree with that, don't talk, go like this, yeah? So that other people see like, okay, there's more people agreeing on this. And if there is a technical issue, you just go like this, yeah? Something, yeah. Then, yeah, if there's any technical problems with the Zoom, you can do like this if you cannot hear a thing, and you just maybe also use your head like I cannot hear you, yeah. And for the rest, you're very welcome to just use the chat box. And what we usually do is when you want to speak, you put a little star in the chat box. I will give an example. Like this, yeah. So if you want to speak, Xavier is my co-facilitator. He will have a close look at the chat box and try to catch you when you want to speak, so that we can organize that a bit. And then for the rest, a little bit of holacracy and sociocracy minds. We also set up some nice rules so that we can respect each other. One of them is that there is absolutely no monopoly on the truth. So nobody is all the time very right. So there's no monopoly on the truth. We are here to learn, as I said before, we are here to learn, to see what other perspectives are around, and to learn from these and to share them. We are not here to convince people, we are here to listen to people and to see what we can learn from them and try to understand. So everybody's a little bit responsible for doing that and to have, and to contribute to this collective learning that we're trying to set up in respect for one another. All right. Now are there any questions about the goal or the welcome or the hand signals? Was it clear to everybody? There's a lot of people who switched off their video, so I cannot see faces. So you have to speak or do it in the chat. Okay. Then one extra thing, if you are not speaking, it would be nice to mute yourself. This is just a technical thing. So there is no background noise when people are speaking. So when you're not speaking, just switch off your mic and mute yourself. That's just a technical thing. Okay, I think we're ready to go. We haven't agreed actually on which expert is going to speak first, so I'm going to pick. Maybe Danny, do you mind going first?
No problem,
No?
Lynn.
I will
No
introduce you. So we invited Danny Joderis to this call. Danny is here as a representative of Agoria. Agoria is an association of Belgian companies that are active in technology and communication. He started working for Agoria in 2017 as the head of telecom and material industries. Now he's the digital manager digital, and he's responsible for the digital and telecom industries within Agoria. And then he's also responsible for external partnerships and the building of ecosystems. He holds a PhD in science and a master in physics. So we are really looking forward to his presentation. Danny.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks to be part of this experiment. It's my first time I'm doing that, so it will be an experiment for me as well. So hi to you all here. Wait, I need to make it work. Yeah, I think it's working now, Lynn. So let me start. I will try to be in the 10 minutes. Of course, we are living special times, and I think today, as this event as well, we all experience that telecommunications is all about connecting people. I started working in the telecom industry in '96, and at that time there was even no mobile communications, and we steadily evolved into 2G, ASM, 3G, 4G, 5G. But the one thing which has always been the essential about telecommunications, it's about connecting, it's about sharing, and it's about sharing experiences, talking, chatting, etc. And so the debate is here, why 5G actually? And so just for you to know, 5G is just the next generation of telecom technology. And just like we did with 2G, 3G, and 4G, 5G will again connect people, more than ever even today. And of course, it will bring a lot of new things, and we will experience a lot of new applications, etc. And I will talk a little bit about it, but the essential thing is always the same. We will connect people in a better way, in a faster way, in a more human way. 5G, from its very start, it has been designed to be green in some sense. The design of that started almost 10 years ago. And already at that time, the increase in communications, bandwidth, and data was incredible, almost doubling every 2 years. And so from the start, 5G has tried to be much more efficient than 4G and to use less energy. The energy used by 5G will be about 10 times less per bit transmitted. One of the main applications that we see today of 5G in Asia and the US is that it provides high-speed internet to rural areas, actually to these areas where the fixed line is very bad. And so with 5G, eventually, at the very end, people living in these rural areas, they will be able to have the same type of experience as we have today. Video conferencing over a wireless connection on larger screens. The whole of Africa has no fixed internet. The whole of Africa, for example, is mobile internet. And so 5G will bring this very high-speed internet to the whole world. Of course, in the Western world, it will enable a lot of new applications in the logistics, mobility, healthcare, also in the industry and consumer spaces. But maybe one of the most important things is that I really believe that we are living a digital revolution, not only with 5G, but also with cloud computing, robotics, automation, artificial intelligence. And it's kind of fourth industrial revolution that we are living now, and it will determine the welfare of us all for the coming years and even the coming century. Now, consumers, patients, workers, we will all benefit from 5G because basically it will make our life easier. For example, in the industry, machines, logistics, it will all be connected through wireless communication instead of the wires we have today. We will be able to handle all that in a much more flexible way. Of course, we will see the venue of new handsets, new tablets, which will consume more capacity and more bandwidth. As I was saying, 5G has been built-in green thinking from the very start. Security, reliability, and energy were the key design parameters to make 5G. The ICT sector, and especially the data centers and the telecom industries, which I'm actually representing in Belgium, they have subscribed to the Green Deal of the European Commission. And our commitment is that by 2030, the data centers and the telecom sector in Europe will be CO2 carbon neutral. Of course, it will involve new energy technologies, a shift to new energy technologies, but it involves also to be a lot more energy sufficient. Just like every next generation of devices, like refrigerators, etc., becomes more energy efficient, this is also the case for telecommunications and especially mobile communications. So by 2030, we want to be CO2 neutral, carbon neutral, and for that we really need that technology because the data continues to increase, and if we just stay with 4G, we will not meet that CO2 emission target. I will not dive in too much now, but of course it brings also a lot of economical activity in the whole of Europe. And in Belgium, we expect that the number of jobs that will be created in the coming 5-7 years will be in the order of 30 to 40,000. And that means not the jobs in the telecom sector, but mainly also in the sectors like the industry, like the logistics, like the Antwerp harbor, and other type of very important sites for our economy. Now we have made a lot of studies, and I will show you the link to our website and to other websites at the end of this short introduction. But basically, 5G is bringing a lot of new applications because the networks are much more reliable. Of course, the self-driving vehicle is something that will come, but not tomorrow. But to do that, you need very reliable networks. If we now drive in our car and we use mobile phone, we drive, for example, from Belgium to the Netherlands, our phone connection risks to be disconnected a couple of times. If you need something like self-driving vehicles or self-driving ships, because in Flanders, automated shipment will be one of the key things for our logistics, very important. So we will need a much better technology, a much more reliable technology than 4G. The same thing if you want to do some early diagnosis in 911 cars, picking up patients which have been accidents. So for the reliability, five reliable applications, 5G is really completely different than our current 4G networks. Now, I've done physics. I'm actually an engineer. I work with a technical company a lot of times. So I have given myself one slide on a more technical aspects. Basically, 5G brings in more bandwidth, so you will be able to download much faster movies and films, or be much better video conferencing. The delay will be much slower, so that, for example, machines will be able to be connected through wireless communications, which is today not possible. And we will be able to connect much more massively in the Internet of Things. The technology of 4G is really not scaling for the Internet of Things. And all that comes with the key feature of reliability. The networks, to be able to use all these type of features, the telecommunication networks need to be much more as reliable as the energy networks. So therefore, we need actually this shift from a 4G, which is more or less reliable, to fully reliable new telecommunication systems. Now, why 5G? Because we want to connect people, because it's a new standard, because it will bring a lot of welfare and innovations for our people. But of course, you can debate that. Now, there is a map, and you there have the link, which is daily updating what is going on regarding deployments of 5G, commercial deployments, trials, research efforts, etc. And you can now say that actually almost every country in an industrial world is embarking on that technology, just like what was happening in 2012, 2014 with the 4G technology. And like in 2008 with 3G. Actually, I'm convinced that in 2030, we will just look back at 5G like we are now just looking back at 3G. It will be a commodity. It will be something which goes for itself. So if you look to this map, you can see that China and the US, China, Japan, Korea, so Asia, and the United States are very much advanced in 5G technologies. And of course, Europe can come a little bit behind. But if we are too much behind, we will miss this digital revolution. If Europe is lacking behind in 5G, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, etc., etc., it will not only hurt us in the near future, but mainly, I'm convinced that for our children and even grandchildren, Europe will become a second-tier country. It's just like regions of the world missed the first and the second industrial revolution, like with the steam engine and electricity. These countries are still lacking behind compared to, for example, Europe and the United States. So we have a responsibility here. We have a responsibility that Europe and Belgium, which is only a small country, but mainly Europe, that we don't miss these new inventions, these new innovations for our people. Now, the main debate.
That's 10 minutes.
Can I have 2 minutes then? 2 minutes. The main discussion is on 5G and health. I can only say 2 words. The ICNIRP, which is the recommendation body for the World Health Organization, published its first emission norm in 1999. A norm, if you are below, then the emission, the radiation is not harming the human body. They updated their emission norm just a month ago, in March 2020, and the norm has just stayed the same. 20 years later and 30,000 scientific studies later, the World Health Organization sticks to its recommendation that the radio emission of mobile communication is not harming the people. Of course, there is a lot of disinformation and fake news going on. And it's a difficult debate. We cannot do that in a couple of minutes. I just gave here you a couple of links, not from us, but from for example, from TF1 and other media, where you can have a look on this pro and cons of the discussion. The only thing which I want to end with is we have to watch out that is in these Corona times, where there are a lot of fear and anxiety because of our health. And of course, I understand. I'm also afraid. My parents are 80 years and more. If they catch Corona, they might die. So there is a lot of anxiety. If you add this up with disinformation on this type of thing, of technologies, you can end up in violence. And unfortunately, over the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, there have been 88 arson attacks on parents in Europe. No people were yet harmed, but 3 workers in the Netherlands were aggressed. They were not harmed, there's no physical aggression, but we should be aware that we could end up there. Therefore, I enjoy this initiative where we can talk to each other, where we can exchange arguments with a rationale behind. So this is a very good thing, but let's really avoid that we don't go into this type of violence. We
Thank
cannot
you.
use that.
Thank you, Danny.
That's my talk. You find here the links to more information. And thanks for having me, given the opportunity on 12 minutes, Xavier. I'm very sorry to give my talk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny, for the introduction here. So to all the participants in the breakout groups, you will be able to write down some questions and then and work on that a bit. So there's lots of times for question in the second round. But first we listen to David Bol and an introduction on him a little bit. So David Bol is an assistant professor at Catholic University of Louvain-la-Neuve. He also holds a PhD in engineering science and a master in electromechanical engineering. He leads, and now David, hope correct me if I'm wrong, he leads the electronic circuits and system group focused on ultra low power design of integrated circuits for the Internet of Things, including computing, power management, sensing, and wireless communication. And he's engaging in a social ecological transition in the field of ICT. So another brilliant expert to invite to this meeting. David.
So thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm going to first disappoint you. I'm not an expert in 5G. My field is electronic circuit and systems in general, and specifically for the Internet of Things, but not for 5G. However, I have worked for 10 years in the footprinting of ICT, information and communication technologies in general. And I have a few concerns about 5G, which is why I'm here today to share these preliminary observations with you and focus on the carbon footprint of 5G. So I probably don't have to bother you with this kind of trends, looking at the rise in the temperature compared to the 1900s, but just a number interesting to realize what it is. The trend shows that we should go up to 6 or even 7 degrees of higher temperature in the 22nd century, the start of the 22nd century. And the 5-degree temperature difference is the same difference that we have from the last ice age to the 1900s. So you can imagine that if we get to this 5 degree, the life on Earth will be quite difficult for our grandchildren.
David, are you sharing a screen?
I do. I am.
It's not working. We cannot see anything, so you have to try again, I think.
Yep. Share screen 2, share screen 1. And now you see it probably.
Yep. But now we see a Facebook page. Yeah, there we go.
And now you see it. Okay, sorry about that.
Perfect, no worries.
So you see on this slide that if we get to this, if we follow the trends that we are following now, we are in face of a massive problem. Or we can illustrate it also a bit this way, like this is the COVID-19 and this is climate change. And so we probably have to do something about that. And climate change is not the only problem of the ecological, it's not a crisis, more a catastrophe, because it's not temporary, it's here to stay. Because we have also the collapse of the biodiversity, which is quite important. The fact that the ground's artificialization is expanding and there is not much natural resources left for preserving the biodiversity. And also, of course, the peak oil and the depletion of critical resources our economy relies on. So the message here is that from now on, our main goal in life should be limiting of ecological footprint. That should be the target. Because if we want, or even we are a bit older, or our children to have a decent life, there are no options. We need to reduce this. Because at the end of July, we already have consumed 1 planet every year. So we need to do something about that. Now, when it comes to ICT, the numbers, we can really debate about these numbers because it's very hard, or there are high uncertainty levels on this. But we can imagine, so in the report from Danny, we saw 2%, here the report says 3%. Well, the greenhouse gas emission of ICT is in this order. But the point is that this is increasing every year because of innovation and also because we are using more of this ICT. And today it's more than the civil air transportation. So it's something that should be discussed, that we have the right to discuss, the same way as we have the right to discuss the air transportation after the COVID-19 crisis. To see where this footprint, ecological footprint of ICT comes from, we can look at this breakdown. It's a breakdown showing the different applications or different infrastructure devices, the data centers, the computers, personal computers, smartphones are there. And the important point is to see that there are two parts. One is for the use phase, when we plug in these devices into an electrical plug and we consume electricity. And the other one is the production. And both have an impact, more or less equal for now, with the state of technology that we have today. And indeed, to produce these devices, like smartphones, the devices go through this life cycle, and you see that the cycle is quoted because there is no cycle. Actually, it's more like a straight line. So we need energy to produce these chips. We need materials, raw materials that we have to make very pure, water, and at the end we get emissions and waste. So it's not just about the energy, but also really about other aspects of this life cycle. You have the extraction of the raw material, and some of them are really critical with geopolitical issues at the only place where we can extract them from the ground. And you also have the electronic waste at the end of life that end up in informal areas where people try to get or to recover bits and pieces from the components with really bad health conditions. Now, just to have an idea, the amount of electronic waste that we generated in 2018 was 50 million tons, which is equal to 5,000 Eiffel Tower, or to have a more local definition, 20,000 atomium buildings. So this is not nothing. And so this comes from, as I said, innovation, of course, but also because we are using more and more of this ICT. And indeed, we know that the mobile internet traffic is growing every year. So every year we have like 46% more data that we consume over the 4G communication standard. And in Belgium, this mobile traffic has doubled approximately even every 12 months, so faster than in the rest of the world between 2012 and 2018. So can actually 5G come to the rescue? This is the big question. Oh, and I forgot to mention this one first. Where does this traffic comes from? Mostly from video. So we have 20% of non-video. 20% are this type of videos, like peer-to-peer videos that we are running now, plus gaming. And we have 60% of online video. And in this online video, the second category is porn. That is really a huge portion of this. So is it why we want like to deploy 5G? Good question. But still, will 5G come to the rescue to save us from this exponential trend, or at least to avoid increasing the footprint of this growing trend of data? Well, if we look at this graph from Nokia, who's really an actor for 5G because they are developing equipment for 5G, we can see that when we look at the energy efficiency of the network, so in gigabytes per kilowatt hour of energy that you consume, you see that 4G is indeed much better than 5G. So it's much better than 4G with a factor 3x improvement. But this means that after 1.5 years, we will get back to the same power consumption if we keep on growing the trend. Only a one-time 3x is not enough. And moreover, the traffic capacity can be much higher than 3x, 10x, maybe 100x, which means that in the end, we'll just use more energy. Okay, we'll transfer much more data, but in the end, more energy. And our goal in life should be to decrease our ecological footprints. So this is the rebound effect. And also it will impact the power consumption of the data centers because we'll use them more with the 5G. So there is this trend also, or these interesting things, which are the small cells from the 5G. And I'm going to spend 5 minutes or 1 minute on this, that will improve better the energy efficiency. So what is the principle for small cells? So you have the base station, which is a macro cell, the same as you have with 4G today. And you can deploy this kind of relays that will transfer the data to your smartphone at a short range. And it's important because 5G will, or part of the 5G will rely on the millimeter wave communication, which is very high frequency. And the point with millimeter waves that they are attenuated by air. So you need to have shorter distance for the communication. Now, target in a small cell density in urban areas is typically 250 per square kilometers. This number can be also debated. It could be 100, it could be 500. Then the requirements for Brussels, just making this calculation, is for 40,000 cells, NYC 200,000 cells. And there is a report from the EU Parliament, which is citing a China security report, saying that it's more than 100 million of cells to cover China. So you can imagine that producing devices for these small cells, unless the complexity is the one of a cell phone, if it's more than a cell phone, it means that it will really increase the carbon footprint of production of ICT. So my last point, how did we get there? So this is something I like a lot, is to analyzing what is drawing the innovation typically in ICT. And I've seen it on myself because I was working this way previously. So, and there is an analysis coming from Professor Gomez from École des Mines of Lyon, who's teaching management to business students. And he said that before the 1970s, we were in the accumulative capitalism, which means that the company borrow money, so they generate debts, they invest to get better production, so that they can make profit, they reimburse, and thanks to that, they can borrow again. That's just the normal capitalism we have learned in our textbooks. But he said that today we are working with speculative capitalism, which is that companies borrow money. With this money, they can invest in technology development. With this invest in technology developments, they can make the investors face or trust the future valorization to bring more money. And so there is no need to generate profits. Well, maybe in the end, yes, but not at the first round. Okay, so you can cycle this way without having actual profits that are made.
10 minutes mark is now.
Okay, so there are two consequences for that, and that I'm going to end up with this. The first, so this phase in the future valorization, what is its impact on the research and the engineering and the development that engineers do? Well, as shareholders want to see their share value of the company rising over time, the way the engineers react naturally or unconsciously is by trying to optimize a KPI, a key performance indicator. That could be the gigabit per second. That could be the number of transistors in your circuits. That could be the number of megapixels you have in your cameras. That could be the number of cameras you have at the back of your smartphones. If you have 1, 2, 3, 4. If you say that you are going to put more, you will get revenue. This is the point, the phase in future valorization. And the second part is this one. So this boss here asked, where should we focus this year? The guy said blockchain, because it will change everything, blah, blah, blah. And then what exactly is blockchain? Also artificial intelligence. So you see that this is buzzword innovation. And I would like to focus on this term. Buzzword innovation is characterized by these terms. It will change everything. Everybody is talking about it. The potential applications are endless. We don't want to be left behind. Okay, and then when you ask what you will do with it, okay, something else. So this is the point with buzzword, and I'm afraid that 5G might come in this field as well. Consequences, well, of course, obsolescence generation. Yesterday, this was incredible. Today, it's outdated. We have to replace the phone. And second one is creation of artificial needs. And this is something I know a lot in my field, which is Internet of Things. When all these objects are now called the Internet of Shit, of stuff that we really don't need, like a connected razor to know if your bird is growing faster than yesterday. The Alexa enabled shower head so that you can order the music while you're taking your shower. These are really artificial needs. So that's it for today. I'll leave my conclusion for after.
Okay, thank you, David, and thank you, Danny. You can stop sharing your screen, David. Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. Wow, that's a lot of information. 24 minutes of experts talking about this topic. So what we're going to do now for about 20 minutes, we're going to break out into smaller working groups. And you're going to discuss a couple of questions that you have for the experts. Normally, when the exact moment of the breakout groups show up, you will get exactly what you will have to do. And also, each group will have a facilitator available as well. So the idea is that you really work with the things that you've heard and that you gather some questions, that you maybe answer each other's question if that is possible. But then after the breakout sessions, the experts will try to answer that. So please take notes in the doc that is available, and that will also show up when the breakout groups are about to happen. And please start with a short check-in. Present yourself to the people taking part in your breakout group. Say who you are and introduce yourself to your fellow workers there. Okay, there you go. See you in 20 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope you got to meet each other a bit in the breakout sessions. So now we will ask of every breakout group a small summary or a couple of questions that you had. Then we give the experts the chance to respond to that, and also you will get the opportunity to respond to the questions of the other breakout group or to add something. Okay, so we're going to have a conversation for about 20 minutes. We will have a plenary conversation. Okay, is there anybody who wants to start? A volunteer raising a finger.
I have the feeling some people are still missing though. Like
me too. I
Cenk?
think we're missing two. No, Cenk is here.
Maybe we just
I am here. I am here.
I can't.
All right, so maybe we'll start with the breakout room 1. It was a group with Lilou, Johannes, Bernard, and Pierre-Louis. Lilou, do you want to take this on?
You're muted, Xavier. So we'll start with breakout group 1, the group with Lilou and others. I don't know if you decided on who's going to give the summary. And
I feel responsible, and I assume that I was going to do it. So I'll do Johannes speaking. My mic is on. Yes, great. So we have how many? I have too many questions to ask, I think. Okay, but I will start from the top and I'll go to the bottom, etc., etc. The first question that came up was, do we really need this 5G? Is 4G not enough? Right? Shall I first list my question and then wait for an answer from the experts? Or how do you want me to do it, Lynn?
I think you should just ask your questions and then we will see.
Yeah. So, really, I mean, there's two questions that are very, do we really need this? Do we really need more data? Do we really need lower latency? Can we not do with the current technology, with the current data rates? That is sort of definitely a very active question. Another question, much more easy to answer, I think, is there a public institution that carries out decent scientific, ideally double-blind, control group, randomized testing on the effect of 5G radiation? So really scientific. We noted that David Bol undercut Dani Goderis's argument about low energy consumption by simply stating that the data efficiency may go up by 10%, by times 10 bit per bit, but that amount of bits is going to increase radically. So that was really not such a great argument. We also noted that both speakers address emotionally to the future of our children. We would like them to become clear about that. And also the question, that's the last one, I know there's too many already, is, I mean, somebody may claim that virtualization is a good thing because, for example, this meeting would have a lower carbon footprint if you were to do this in real life, en présentiel, or do we have a lower footprint even using 5G, right? This is not 5G. If we were using 5G, so it's sort of that balance. Lots of questions, I'm afraid.
Should I take some of these, Lynn?
Yes, please,
yeah.
Danny.
So maybe let me start with the technical ones, which are the easiest ones. About the energy consumption, my statement about 10 times more efficient is indeed per bit. And as you could see, it will go in 2 waves. The 3 times is the first deployment of 5G, that's the macro network. And then it comes at 10 times with the micro cells, like David pointed out rightfully. The argument that this will take more production, these micro cells will be built in pieces of software, for example, in electrical poles. It will not be standalone devices. So from that perspective, electrical poles, you can see the street lights and other things, it will be built in things. It will not come as standalone. So, but of course, the main question is about the data increase. And that's actually, I think, a question about the way we live, because we can address this thing from 2 perspectives, the way we live and from an innovation, technology, efficiency perspective. And yeah, if we have always seen that over the last 20 years, we have been doing much different things in our life. We have been applying technology in different kind of perspectives. But in this case, I think this Corona crisis is to some extent opening our eyes. I will give you an example myself. I have been for 2 years in the States, I've been in Paris and I've been in Singapore, but I've always been at my home, at my office working. I almost never worked at home because I really like the human touch with my colleagues. Today, I'm already 6 weeks at home, and I think, honestly, that this is better for the carbon footprint. Honestly, I mean, I don't ride my car, I don't take buses, I'm just at home. Of course, I miss the human touch. And so I think going forward, we will have to try to find a new equilibrium between consumption, between traveling, enjoying meeting people, and staying at home and still try to enjoy things. And there 5G can bring something, I'm really convinced. Then, okay, I will end it. About our children, the main point that they wanted to make. Yeah.
Oh, Danny, do you mind if we just
No,
go to
no,
David
okay.
first?
It's okay.
And so to balance the voices a bit? Okay,
yeah,
great.
probably we should take it question by question. Otherwise, you want to take them all. And
yeah,
indeed.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Lynn. I'm sorry, David.
no worries. David, maybe?
Yeah, so I agree with Danny that if we should run this meeting physically, we will consume much more greenhouse gases, or emit much more greenhouse gases than the online version. That's for sure, unless if we are just walking to the place, right? In this case, we are just making exercise and it's good. The only, however, in my opinion, no one is running it with 5G and it's working. So if people that are wanting to deploy 5G and use this argument, they need to define what would be better. Because in my opinion, I cannot imagine it. In my mind, I cannot imagine what could be better, useful, I mean. So this is an important point to avoid the buzzword that yes, the future will be bright with 5G. Yes, but how? More practically, is something that's, in my opinion, should be addressed. I'm not pointing to Danny because yeah, everyone has his responsibility, and it's not a personal thing. It's just in general. If the community wants to engage in 5G, we want to be aware of what will it bring, and also on the other side, what will it cost more precisely, because I don't have proper number. And then with the small cells deployments, yes, indeed, maybe small cells will be deployed in traffic lights, for example, but it's still, the traffic light cannot communicate in 5G itself. We need to add devices into it. And even if the infrastructure is the same, internally there will be something else added. And this something else requires resources to be produced. So maybe it's a way to mitigate the impact, yes, and to not consume more ground, so to artificialize more ground, but still the production of the devices inside it, it's there, and it also has to be accounted. Is it a big problem? I don't know, but this is my fear, and we should evaluate that with numbers. That should be, this is very important to me.
Is there any reaction? Thank you, David. Is there any reaction from the group? A question. I see Bernard. Is there somebody else who wants to? If you don't have your video, please add a little asterisk in the chat so we see that you want to speak.
Yes.
Only Bernard for the moment? Okay, Bernard.
Yes, I mentioned it in the breakout room also. I think we have to make a big difference about the things, the applications who needs 5G and the applications who doesn't. For example, to do chirurgy on distance, or for health applications on distance, then I say go for it with 5G because it's necessary. And when it's not necessary, like in this case, when we are in a vehicle and you can do it with the fiber optics, why should we use 5G and damage our health? So I think we have to get to a pragmatic approach for this issue. I think because you can't stop the big business to deploy 5G. So we have to make a pragmatical approach. I've done it.
Thank you, Bernard. Let's maybe go to the second breakout group. Who was Xavier? Who was in the second breakout group? Do you see a name?
Mayo,
Okay.
Mathieu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mayo, is there somebody in your group that wants to share? Did you agree on somebody or?
We haven't agreed on that, so I'm just going to ask them. Lucas or Peng Cheng, would you like to share our questions? Or shall I? Because I was the note taker.
Yes.
Peng Cheng, you have
yes.
access to our Google Doc?
Let me check. I have it, but there's no, okay, I get it. Yeah, there's some question to the Daniel. The first is need to be brick or 4G materials to build the 5G, or can it be recycled? The second one is, can old smartphone computers still work on 5G? The third is, can we as people still have an influence on the decision? The last one is it true that 5G cannot pass through trees? Do we need to cut these trees?
We will have to take them by one. It was not able to take them. First of all, about the trees, we don't have to cut the trees. 5G is using 5G like it is deployed today in Europe between 500 megahertz and let's say 5 gigahertz. The bands in Belgium are 700 megahertz and 3.6 gigahertz. These radio waves can pass through trees. The higher you go into the frequency, like in Japan, they are now experimenting in the 26 gigahertz band. That's only for, let's say, indoor applications where there is no obstacles. So, but to today's plans in Europe, the radio waves can pass the trees. About equipment, can 4G equipment use 5G? It always comes as an overlay. Even the first base stations that, for example, Proximus will deploy will be in 5G overlay. That means that these antennas will beam, that the smartphones and tablets will as well for 4G and 5G. So it's a gradual approach. Of course, dedicated 5G smartphones will not be able to listen to 4G, but then they are made for that. But have to know that today there is still a lot of 2G around. A lot of people, especially elderly people, are just using their GSM of 10, 15 years ago. So it's something gradual. I didn't understand your other question. Maybe you have to come back to a couple of others.
Thank you so much. I think you answered most of the question. The remaining one is, can we as people still have influence on the 5G decision? Because it seems now the 5G is already in process.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. First of all, I really want to say that I enjoy this type of experiences. And you are now 20 people. I think I want to help to go to 200 next time if you want, because I'm positively surprised by the way the debate is going on. So it's really in a positive way. Now, can we influence state decisions, or can we influence, for example, the decisions of the mobile operators? I think that's doubtful. I think you have to know that maybe you're already influencing, but in an indirect way. It's not direct democracy. There has been a hearing in the Belgian parliament on December, I have to look, December 13th. There was a hearing in the Belgian parliament on the topic, where I was also a speaker next to Test Aankoop and other people. So because it's a public debate, you influence already. So it's an indirect influence, I would think, but probably Leen and Xavier can much better reply to that type of question.
I'm sorry, actually, I asked the question, and it was not just as we individual people, but also as Belgian people in the global 5G deployments. Could you comment on this too?
As Belgian people on the 5G deployment? Well,
Belgian or European people, I would say.
You know, it's a question of direct democracy versus the democracy that we now know it today. But for example, in number of communities that Proximus announced to deploy, there are hearings. In the Walloons part of the country, there are hearings organized by the communities about the topic. Whether or not 5G will be deployed there. But if you honestly ask my opinion, I'm really convinced it's not harming health. It's more like the discussion on the way of living. And yeah, it will be very difficult to stop this type of progress. It's like, just like we cannot imagine that we would not have 3G or 4G now. And the same will probably be true in 10 years, although I don't have killer applications. But you are influencing. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Danny. David, is there anything that you would like to add from your perspective?
I'm sorry. Actually, we have some questions special for David. Could I launch
for David, especially? Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
Okay, we would like to ask David. You in your slides, even you agree that 5G is 3 times energy efficient than the 4G, but you think there's a rebound effect. More fast people use it more, so generate more e-waste. But it looks like already outside of the engineering is more about the human behavior. So do you think still as an engineer or industry or scientist can did something about that? And another question is that, could you imagine what would be happen to Belgium if the rest of the world, most of the country are developed 5G, but Belgium did not? Do we still be confident the higher life quality if most of the country are in the 5G, but Belgium are left behind that?
Thank you for this very difficult question, Feng Sheng. Let's start with the first one. Can the engineers have an impact on the e-waste that 5G would generate? I guess that there could be always an impact. The smarter you are, or the more effort you put in innovation, the best results you can get. If this metric is one of the indicators that is valorized by the system in which you're working. So if there is an indicator on the e-waste generated or the carbon footprint of the production, then it makes sense for also the engineers in this field to work at that level and try to optimize that. So I guess we can have savings, but we cannot make it neutral. So this is not possible. There will be an impact. You can limit the cost of 5G. This is something where research can play a role. So in my opinion, we can't rely only on the research and the innovation process, but we have to rely also on the social changes and the human behavior. And so it's a mix of both, like innovation on one side and sobriety on the other side. And I think sobriety is something very important for the consumer aspect. The issue is that marketing is trying to let you use more data and buy more devices. So consumers have to fight against or to resist to marketing to get to this sobriety, which is really not easy. So it's really a systemic stuff and it's very difficult to manage. My feeling is that with the new generation of engineers, by new I really mean the last 2 years, there is a really a mindset that's changing. So the engineers want to know what they are working for just after they graduate, want to know what they will be working for and if they are working for something that makes sense to them. So if making them is deploying 5G with less carbon footprint or lower impact, perfect. If for some of them working for deploying 5G is meaningless, then in this case they won't go working there. And so it's also a matter of favorizing a type of industrial activity where the engineers want to work and where they don't want to work. So this could be also an impact. And for the second question, what would be the consequence if we stick to 4G? This is really a difficult question. Do we have the opportunity to try that without putting Belgium in a deep economic crisis worse than the one with the COVID-19? I believe we can, but it's a personal opinion. I have no way to define that. However, what we can do is make the parallelism between this data race with the arm or weapon race, right? If two countries are buying and building more weapons, they think the other one will do, and they don't want to be left behind, so they're just climbing and escalating on the weapons. So, of course, data are not as harmful as weapons. Definitely, it's something more, which is more okay. But still, it's something that we are racing because the other do. We have no reason to go for 5G except that the other are doing it, and we think there will be a market, but we don't know exactly what. So, is this a good justification? In my opinion, not. But it's really it's only my personal opinion.
Is Bernard raising his hand?
Okay, thank you, David, for this explanation. Bernard, because we're going to go out in breakout rooms, is it a long question, or can you maybe keep it until after the second breakout session?
I can keep it afterwards, no problem.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's do that then. Okay, so we're gonna break out into groups again.
No, there's one more group.
Oh, there's one more group. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought. Thank you, Xavier. Where's the third group?
With Jan Tobias.
Jan Tobias?
Samit and Valérie.
Sorry, I need to find the button. I actually think, and please, the other people from my group, I think all of our questions have been asked. So there was the question about the justification for introducing 5G. There was a question about recycling devices and engineers finding solutions to design these systems such that the resource consumption is reduced. And I think most of these have been asked already, or did I miss something? Valérie and the others, anyone wants to raise something?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, then I think we are done.
Well, there is one point you raise, if I may, where you say, can we build this infrastructure without destroying the environment? This is a great concern. It's not just the handsets, but it's also the antennas and the relay stations. And we all imagine these antennas to be as big as, as the ones that are, as the one we have now. Danny, you mentioned something about this. David, do you confirm that it's possible to have these antennas at very low carbon footprint?
There will be, but I probably don't know the answer really to your question. But there are really two types of antennas, like you have been seeing in the picture of David. There's this bigger antennas, which are more or less like we know them today. the balls, the big ones, they call that macro cells, and their footprint is more or less the same as we know it today. You know, and also to make the material, to make the passive material, to make the active equipment, so the electronica, that's more or less the same. And then there are the smaller antennas, which will keep radiation lower, by the way. So that keeps radiation lower, which will bring low radiation, better for health, but of course there will be much more of them. Calculation vary in between 2 to 5 times more antennas than we have them, as you know, today, and that's why they will be built in. It will be not standalone devices, but yeah, it will increase. It will increase for sure the production. I will not deny that. That's unavoidable. The macro antennas, similar, let's say, like we know today, and the 4Gs will just gradually evolve into 5Gs, small cells which give the low radiation or new ones. So yeah, and will require new production.
David, do you want to add something short?
No, yeah, I agree. The orders of magnitude are correct. Like the macro cell will have the same order of magnitudes as the macro cell of 4G. Probably it will require more hardware, like with the massive multi-input, multi-output antennas, much more cells. It will be it will consume more carbon or emit more carbon to make it, yeah. But the order of magnitude is the same. For the small cell, the order of magnitude is much lower, but how low is it? I doubt it would be a cell phone footprint. In my opinion, it would be more complex and so more carbon intensive. But I have no data for that. So this is something that would be very interesting to find out.
Thank you for the last question, Johannes and Danny and David, for answering this. So last breakout sessions, it's gonna be a shorter one, 10 to 15 minutes max. Just reflect on what you've been hearing so far. Have your questions been answered? Are there any more concerns? Have you learned something? Did you get a new perspective, something that you didn't know, something that impacted or touched you or reached you in a way? We can discuss that in the small groups, and we will come back to plenary to see if there are any very urgent concerns, urgent reflections, urgent thoughts that still need to be checked with the experts that we have, or with each other if we want. And then we, it's 10 to 15 minutes, and then we go towards the checkout of this session. Okay, so Xavier is going to lead you to the breakout groups, and you will see the instructions appearing. Is everybody back?
Yeah,
whether they're readable is a different question.
We added our notes to the bottom of session 2, although we will break out session 1.
Ah, we are 16. All right, welcome back, everybody.
Thank you.
So it is 15:42, so we're gonna have another 10 to 15 minutes max in plenary to discuss the last questions that you have, and then we go to the checkout, and then the first people assembly has been effected. Okay. What we suggest now to do this as efficient as possible is that the breakout groups just list their questions one by one after each other, and then the experts react on that. So we have 3 big breakout groups. We suggest, Jan Tobias, you want to start?
We don't really have questions at this moment. We just try to phrase our conclusions from this meeting. And yes, there are some open points to debate, but I think they are not questions that can be answered in the following 10 minutes.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Maybe you wanna start? Like take 1 minute?
I can do that, yeah. So I think we concluded that there are basically no killer use cases for 5G around right now. There are lots of potential use cases which might be interesting, but we don't know whether they're going to be the big economic or whatever game changer. We are apparently quite unclear about the impact of 5G on the climate and ecological emergency, and whether there might be more important areas for economic development or for debate. And just because the impact of 5G might be low compared to agriculture or industry in general or something like that, we should probably still debate it. We also realize that we cannot quantify that impact right now and the possible damage that probably goes far beyond environmental damage in Belgium. So we are wondering what kind of governance structure could possibly make a decision about whether that technology should be deployed, and whether the price for that in terms of environmental impact, in terms of social impact, in terms of people in the global south that might be exploited in material extraction or whatever is worth to pay, is socially, ethically acceptable. And then we asked the question of how we can possibly communicate with the population at large to kind of stop or debate this destruction of infrastructure of mobile towers that we're seeing right now, and whose task it should be to lead this conversation. Is that an industry task? Is that governments? Should that come from citizen initiatives? That's it.
Thank you, Jan Tobias. Can we maybe listen to another breakout group now? Yeah, we can. That's that. Some other breakout group, any volunteers?
Yeah, let's hear breakout session
Johannes?
1, and the notes are yeah, they're there. I mean, the big theme in our, we have more questions, and we're very surprised. Many of us, at least half of us, were surprised that health issues were not raised, and we can sort of summarize it by using the metaphor of a drunken beach party. And that, you know, we know that, you know, sunburn is a very bad thing. And we don't see any similar studies about the effects of 5G technology on human health. Was you know, nobody's convinced. I mean, few people were not convinced about the efficacy or the decency, the scientific value of the studies that are being done right now, because they're not compared to this once that was raised again. And there was also why the drunken beach party. Beach was the sun, the drunken had to do with the cocktail effect, and this is something I learned. Where you have to look at the impact of a certain technology, 5G in this case, in combination with other technologies. And as an example, was given that you know, 5G technology might, you know, waves might enhance each other, and thus create a much stronger effect. Not necessarily going as you know, using the same kind of techniques that somebody said that the US Army is using by having an enhanced version of 5G to attack dispersed demonstrators. So the cocktail effect, you know, 5G not on its own, and you know, the sunburn effect, meaning do we have long-term studies about the effect of for example, 5G technology. Yeah. So health is still an issue with many of us.
Okay, thank you, Johannes. We're first going to listen to the third breakout group, but there were also some strong reactions from people. So I'm actually quite curious about their voice as well, since they were quite strong. But let's first see what the third breakout group was offering.
Do you mean the second one? Wasn't Johannes?
For the second one, yeah, the third one now, but I don't know in which number Jan Tobias and Johannes were. So, so the last one, which hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, I think that is ours. Lucas or Jiangping, do you wanna?
Yeah, I can launch the question in our group.
Peng Cheng, sorry.
Peng Cheng, yes. Actually, our question I'm more to the Dania. First, is there the research being done about the public health risk about the 5G. The second question is, could we continue to use the smartphone computer device antenna for 4G to 5G? And the last question is that what's the practical benefit we got from the 5G? I mean, the practical is not the bright future, because to be honest, I come from China in Shanghai, and is there already commercial 5G base station. Personally, I never had the experience to get benefit from the 5G, and even my friend living in Shanghai, I never heard they have, in my memory, I didn't hear the benefit from the 5G. So in the 5G commercial used country, China and the United States, is they really change their life thanks to the 5G? That's all question.
Thank you. Lynn?
Okay, yes, Danny?
Can I quickly answer?
Of course.
I think the main question is on the health, and indeed it's one of the main discussions within the population, and especially now in these days of where we all care about our health. We'll be very brief because you can find a lot of information on our website and in several studies. First of all, it's very important to know that the radiation, the radio emission of 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G is the same radiation. The physics are exactly the same. And in the bands from 500 megahertz, let's say, into 5 gigahertz, it's the same radiation, it's the same spectrum that is used for these applications. It's just another protocol and another way of transmission. But the radiation, the physical impact, is the same. Second, you should also know that if you hold a handset against your ear, a GSM, a mobile device, it's radiating up to 100 times more than any base station, than any antenna, let's say. So the radiation which you're holding at your ear is just much more impacting. 3, about the norm. So the ICNIRP is the organization, the international organization, which is giving recommendations to the World Health Organization about the norm. That's this 41.2 I mentioned. This norm is aggregated for all technologies because someone said you have 5G, but you can have 4G, still 2G. You have to count that everything up, and this is the maximum norm which is allowed by the world, the WHO. So that was a specific question there.
Okay. Danny, maybe we can go to David now. David, was there anything you've heard that you want to react on? I think the group of young has basically focused on decision-making processes and how much citizens have to be involved in do we or do we not deploy 5G and topics like this. And that the questions of Pingching were actually more about how does this impact us? Do we all have to buy a new device? Can we still use our own phones, etc.? So that was more about the concrete impact. Is there anything you want to react on?
Maybe there's something interesting to realize that 5G is the name for the next generation of communication, and it includes several technologies. It's not like one technology that is making 5G. And so, in my opinion, it's not like a binary choice for the whole 5G. There could be points that could be interesting if it allows to reduce the emissions because of better waveform design, better communication design, or to reduce the energy consumption. That could be nice if we stick to the same data rate or the same usage. But there are other technologies like the millimeter wave communication. This one are really different from the one we use for 4G. So the health impact will be definitely different. I'm not saying it's going to be higher. I have no idea. Just it's different. And 4G is not like one technology. It's a mix of several stuff with the macro cell, the small cells. It's a mix. And so I think that's so far the debate on 5G puts everything together is that either people who are winning 5G, okay, they don't need really maybe to know that there is a split, but the people that are against 5G, they are against 5G points without looking at the different technologies that are into them. So it's important, I guess, to realize that there are several technologies And we can't really conclude with the binary stuff like there is no health impact. There will there are no health impact for some of them, but for other there will be. So it's difficult to analyze. So now the question about the citizens.
Danny, yeah, for citizens, yes, I was going to that. Do we need to buy new devices?
If you want to communicate with 5G, yes.
Yes, you will have to need 5 new devices, yes. Most of the devices will be backward compatible, meaning they will also be able to transmit on 4G just for the transition period. Like 4G and 3G, it was the same, but to be able to use the full benefits of 5G, we'll have to buy dedicated devices. And so there, the whole challenge is the circular economy, or be able to recycle these things. Because, yeah, we know all of us have still mobile phones of 2G in our somewhere in our home. So that's the whole challenge, actually.
Yeah. And so I'm going to disappoint you. It's impossible to recycle the chips that are inside the devices because it's so much integrated. You see that you have the chip is millions of transistors in 1 square centimeter. So much integrated, you can't recycle it. Or at least if you want to recycle, it will cost you 10x more energy than making a new one. So we can't really recycle this part. What we can do is reuse or maybe replace some parts, but not really recycling.
Okay, we are 5 minutes to 4. I'm afraid we'll have to go to the checkout, and I feel there's so much more to be discussed. We've just briefly opened up. Yeah, I would like to go to the checkout, and since there's only 15 of us left, I would like to give you all 15 of you 10 seconds to share something, 10 to max 15 seconds to share a lot thought, maybe on something learned, a perspective, but very, very short, okay? Xavier will also open the poll again so that you can actually indicate and that we can see if there was a mind shift there going on. All right, I'm gonna give the first word to Bernard for the check-in. Excuse me, for the checkout. Bernard. Oh, Bernard, yeah. Bernard, you were muted.
Okay, sorry.
Start over.
There's an article, he just is edited. Sander Funnerman, he studies for 20 years radiation, the influence on ecology. And he always say the bees are the barometer of our fauna and flora. And it seems that bees are very influenced by radiation. And when we don't have bees anymore, there won't be fauna and flora anymore. So I wanted to finish by this barometer story.
Thank you. Can you pass on the checkout to somebody?
I pass the micro to Majo.
Mayo,
yeah.
No, I was not unmuted. Maybe my last words, I'm still confused. So I'm very happy there's 2 more of these assemblies coming up, one in French and one in Dutch. But I tend to, no, I'm not going to say. I find it a really difficult one. And I already have a question for the next one is like, if we in Europe do not have 5G, would that have an impact on rural communities in Africa? Or can Africa have 5G, we have 4G, and is that possible? Because I wouldn't want our decision to negatively influence what is happening in Africa.
Okay.
And I see Lilo doing like this, so I'll pass the word to Lilo.
Well, thank you, everyone. It was really interesting. I've learned lots of things. I still feel like we need to look more into the environmental aspects as to how many devices will be produced and how they can or rather cannot be recycled. So that's something I'd like us to focus on in the future. Very happy that there are 2 more of these coming up. And thanks everyone, and thanks Lynn and Xavier and everyone for organizing it.
Maybe Johannes, you can go.
Yeah, so yeah, very interesting. I'll happily be participating in tomorrow's session as well. Yeah, I'm very confused and hope to remain so for a long time, because I think this is an important question. It has a symbolic value, at least a symbolic value, much like Corona is symbolic. It's not really the big crisis that is going to hit us, but it's questions about our way of life. 5G, Corona, all of that. So I think it's really, really interesting. So thank you. And I pass the word to Valérie.
Okay, I think we don't have a clear view enough on what really would be the damage versus the advantages of 5G, because there will be some savings in the environment, in the carbon usage. So I don't think we have a case there. So it's very difficult to say. Well, it's going to be a nightmare for the environment. Yeah, I can see worries the way there were worries when other technologies came in history. So yeah, that's an interesting one, and interesting to hear everybody. I pass on to Cenk. I think he wanted to talk.
So hi. So I just want to say that thank you to Xavier and Lean for organizing this. It was my first time, so it was very interesting to participate in it. And maybe some closing thoughts of what David said. So I agree that if we cannot recycle that, we should reuse them, because I'm a very I'm pro reusing items. I'm pro secondhand items, and I've been a secondhand items buyer for a couple of years now. But my biggest concern about that, maybe to discuss some next time, would be all of that is nice, but of course, as long as the big companies do not stop it from basically making outdated smartphones or other technology products unusable, because that's, of course, we all know how Apple was forcing people to buy better phones by slowing them down, killing their batteries. So I would be very up for reusing them, but maybe how can we focus on the companies to allow us to use again these goods? So thank you very much.
Oh, I cannot do this. Okay, thank you, Cenk.
Maybe I can pass the word to, sorry, maybe I can pass the word to Pierre-Louis.
So thank you very much, everyone. Actually, I'm still a bit confused, and I still don't have a clear opinion on 5G. I just think that 5G is maybe just a little part of a broader picture of how do we want to live in this world with technology, where do we need to stop, when this is enough, and so on. So yeah, it's an open debate. Yeah, thank you very much. And I can pass the mic to, let's say, Bernard, did you already?
Bernard has talked already, I think.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sumit, maybe? Or Valerie, Sumit? Yeah.
Okay, Sumit here. Thank you, Lean and Javier, for organizing this. I'll try to keep my concerns short. Actually, I was very much convinced in the beginning to roll out 5G and so on, but hearing the presentation here, I'm a little less convinced that we should actually roll it out now, mainly because of the environmental concerns and whether we really need this much push in data and not. I mean, I obviously see, coming from a technical background myself, the advantage of having, let's say, a single protocol to be able to connect to different devices and so on. But then I also see that there are still plenty of unexplored areas, perhaps with regards to health and so on. So I'm less convinced. Maybe I'll close just with a technical question. I think it was Maho who raised the question about whether they can roll out 5G in Africa. I don't know if it's possible. I think they are still trying to come in terms with 4G or like advanced LTE solutions. So I think it will be quite some years before they can. Okay, so yeah, I'd just like to and then that's my concern. Another one, so I think who is left behind is maybe Pengcheng. So.
And I would really appreciate Citizen Spring organized this online talking and really enjoyed the small group of talking, and everyone has the opportunity to express the opinions. And thank you so much. I will pass to Lucas.
He's gone already.
He's gone, I think. Yeah.
Okay, then I pass to David.
Oh, thanks, Pengcheng. So to conclude this, my feeling is that imagine that we don't take this growth of data traffic for granted. Imagine that we assume it doesn't have to be this way. In this case, could we use our energy innovation to decrease our footprints instead of making growing things? So it's kind of a post-growth conclusion. And I pass the word to Danny. I guess it's better than Xavier and Lynn conclude.
Thank you, David. So for me, it's the debate is we need more time to debate about the way of living. It has clearly to do how we live with technology and how we live as people. I'm of course still much in favor of new technology, although we don't know the killer applications. I believe that in Europe, and it's more like a global European question, that we should go for it together with other technologies so that we can keep up with the other China and US, so that we can be independent and that we can still defend European values, being independent from the United States and China. And that's why we need also to move here.
Jan Tobias, have you checked out?
No, but now Danny makes me think about to what extent high bandwidth a European value represents. But yeah.
Independence. Not dependent of the States and China.
Yeah, based on technology that is mostly produced by Huawei. But independent of that, I like the thought that came up from David, I think, about introducing KPIs that focus on environmental impact and potentially social impact. And I think that's a cool takeaway. And I think that's something we can probably work on, because if you have it as a KPI, you need to be measurable. And I think that would also make this discussion that we're having here much more concrete if we could actually say, hey, we're going to need that amount of resources to build that infrastructure. It will give us these economic advantages at these specific costs on a social level, on a environmental level. And I think that's what we probably need. So yeah, that was a nice takeaway, I think. And I thank you very much for organizing.
So, bye-bye.
Xavier,
Ciao,
you
Danny.
go. No, wait.
I go, I go
No,
out.
wait. You have to go?
No?
Okay. No, I want to, yeah, Xavier, just say words and then I need 1 more minute.
Okay, I'll be quick. Just to say that it's not only Lynn and myself who are organizing this, but also Lilu and Jan Tobias. So thank you to all of you who contributed to make this possible. So thank you also to the experts, obviously, and the people who helped taking notes and the facilitators. My personal point of view, as I'm a software engineer, I really like what I was able to hear here. The question really I have was more like, what I learned was the fact that it was actually 10 times more efficient to move bits with this 5G compared to 4G. But then the question is, in the ideal world, we produce the same amount of data. We just try to be more optimal as engineers to use the bandwidth rather than expanding the bandwidth, right? So ideally, we don't use more data, but we use less energy per data that we transmit. That would be a good thing. Also, the other thing I know is that when my desk becomes bigger, I tend to use all the space on my desk. And so that's the problem. As software engineers, we actually are much less efficient than we used to be because we just take whatever is at our disposal. But thank you everyone it was great, really great, and really great debate, and great to hear all the different perspectives. And last but not least, Lynn.
Okay, I'm not going to take a position on 5G. I'm just a facilitator, and I'm happy to listen to you all. So thank you very, very, very much for joining, all of you, for contributing at your best to this meeting. We will get an email with an evaluation form. We would much appreciate for you to give us feedback on the format. How did it go for you? What can we improve in the format on doing people assemblies like this? So please help us with that, and we will also send you the report and the presentation of the two experts in that email. So voila, that's what you're going to hear from us in the future. And well, have a very nice evening tonight, and hopefully you will join us in one of our next people assemblies.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for joining.
Posted on the upcoming people assemblies, just like our Facebook page, Citizen Spring, that was organizing this event, so that you will be notified.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Oh, thanks, everyone.
See you.
Thank you.